Hi.
Hello.
In fact, guys, you will never know how many takes this is taking us, but the magic of Zoom.
You're doing quite well, actually.
Many as we
Well,
like.
I say so myself.
I think you're doing marvelously, darling. So last week we spoke about tuning our heart. Like, life is full of stressful situations. There's just no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Like, we can't sail through life without something coming up. Times will be harder, times will be easier. So give us the positive psychology stance on how to cope with stressful situations. Like, give us coping mechanisms rather than like maladaptive ways of dealing with it.
Totally. So there is a theory or a model, of course. It's called the transactional model of coping, I believe. And according to this, stress is a reaction to a situation where the demands on a person exceed their resources. So I just wanted to open up by saying that, because I think it's so easy for us to beat ourselves up and be like, why do I have to do that bad thing that I do every single time, and there's so much shame and so much anger and so many really unhelpful emotions that we put on ourselves when we fall into our unhealthy or maladaptive coping mechanisms. But actually, we need to recognize that very often we're put in a situation which is incredibly stressful, more stressful than we should be in. So I just wanted to start off by, I'm saying one of the ways in which we can help ourselves is by expressing compassion and self-love. So I think it's just helpful to come back to that time and time again, because we know that we're traditionally very bad at being kind to ourselves. So then, when we are in a situation that is incredibly stressful and we don't have the resource, or it can be harder for us to find the resources that we need than any other situation that we've been in that week, obviously we can then lean into what is, easiest to help us emerge from that situation. So an unhealthy coping mechanism. And, where lots of people go wrong, or people tend to just think, drugs and alcohol. And that is one of many, but there's also self-blame, denial, avoidance, aggression. There are loads and loads of, suppression. There's loads of unhealthy coping mechanisms that, that we have that have followed us through from childhood, for survival purposes. But from a positive psychology perspective, there are ways to help us. There are ways in which we can help ourselves through these times. So there are three kind of main buckets of strategies. So one is the appraisal focused strategy bucket. Then there's the problem focused strategy bucket and the emotion focused strategy bucket. And people might have a tendency to do, if you're someone that's quite analytical, quite logical, you might have a tendency to be more problem focused. I will go into what these are as well. Or sometimes we can lean into a bit of everything depending on what the stressor is. So for example, when I say appraisal focused bucket, that can be around like detecting and disputing like negative self-talk, rational thinking, finding humor in a situation. So that's appraisal. Problem solving is, the clues in the name, kind of active problem solving, or like seeking like support, enhancing time management and becoming more assertive. And then the emotion focused bucket is more around releasing pent-up emotions, exercising, meditating, managing hostile feelings, forgiving others. No one strategy is more effective than other, but these are all kind of better strategies or coping mechanisms than the ones that I mentioned previously. So self-blame, denial, leaning into a drink and so forth. So that's kind of that's probably the most helpful kind of model to talk through. There's obviously loads more information and available, loads more theories available. And then in terms of like how, like what can we do to actually put some of these into practice? So there are different positive psychology interventions which we can do. And I know actually, Joe, I'm not sure whether you're whether it's going to be taking place in this particular experiment, but I know you did it for the last one, which was like thinking about your best possible self.
Yeah.
and writing that down. So a really good positive psychology intervention when we're faced with a really traumatic experience or like just a really stressful situation is expressive writing. So where you think about like the event at play, to say you've gone through a recent breakup and you literally just like journal it, write about it for 3 days consecutively. That is, I mean, there's been numerous research about expressive writing. That's, for example, a positive psychology intervention that can really help. And there are loads of others as well.
Yeah. Amazing. And I think it's really interesting about your buckets. I love that you brought buckets into it. There are actually different ways, because often you just think there's maybe like one way, and actually we're such different people. Like people, I can see that the problem solving one would be much more for like the logical people,
Really?
And quite often with my husband, like I will go to with a problem, and actually all I want is a cuddle and be like, don't worry, it's going to be fine, and he comes up with all these logical like solutions for me, and I'm like, I don't fucking want a logical solution, and tell me it's going to be all right, rather than trying to actually fix the problem.
Completely. So in that situation, perhaps something like a meditation would be something that's better suited to you at that time, if actually you just want to feel and come within yourself rather than being solution oriented. And actually positive psychology makes it even easier for us, because there are different coping scale questionnaires which are available. So happy to kind of send them across if that can be helpful to be shared with the group. And they allow us to reflect on our coping strategy so that we're more self-aware of what might be helpful to us as a healthy coping strategy, dependent on the stressful situation that we're faced with. Because then the work's done for us. We go, okay, this is an X situation. I know from that questionnaire that I filled out that I might need something emotional versus something problem solving. So it kind of makes it even easier for us to think about. It's one less thing for us to think about, essentially.
So useful, because we are all so different, but at the same time we're all very similar, and we all like I always say, like, the brain is so complicated but actually very simple as well. We all do kind of work in the same way, and so the fact that we can go and do a questionnaire, and like obviously it's very much generalizing, but to steer you in the right direction, to give you that, and that just points you down the right road and says, walk down this road, see what you find on the way.
Completely.
I have no fucking idea where to start.
Completely.
I don't, and this is what when I had my journey, I was like, I don't have any resources. I don't know where to even go with this. Like, all I know is that stop. And then obviously, but then you find out different ways. You discover people, you discover theories, you discover things that make you happy. You follow the breadcrumbs, and you're like, oh, yeah, a bit of joy, I'll follow this, or this resonates with me, I'll follow this.
Completely. And that's actually what I also do particularly love about positive psychology, because it's a psychology, it's based on science. So it's the science of optimal functioning. Really, it's all based on empirical research and studies, and you can quantitatively and qualitatively kind of assess everything and measure everything. So because of that, there are scales and questionnaires and surveys, and it just, for me, in my opinion, obviously as someone that studies the subject, it just helps us a little bit more, because you look at social media and it's just full of like these amazing influencers, and it's like, just be your true self, and people are like, I don't know how to get there. Like, that's great, but I feel like I'm here and you're here, and like I don't like what tools do I have to better have that self-awareness and that understanding. And so it's just about finding the tools that work for you. But I think there is a lot out there that is available to us.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm going to actually link. I'm going to get you to send me links to all these different questionnaires and things, so people can actually do them if they feel. And you know what? Even if it's just a case of doing it, like reading it and going, okay, cool, fine. Something goes in, it's just sort of like, what's the saying? I've fucking forgotten what the saying is. Just plants a seed, Even if you don't follow that route, follow that path, like the fact that the seed is planted, you're like, okay, so that's the way, that's more like what I am, and that's what, rather than just being like, I have no idea.
Exactly. So, yeah, exactly. Couldn't agree more.
Amazing. Danny, once again, star, and next week for our very last tips and tricks with Daniela, really beautiful surname that I can't pronounce. I will see you.